Today I'd like to review an interesting movie that I just saw the other day. The movie is entitled Mud. It was made in 2012, I think maybe released in 2013. It has a very indie feel to it, although it stars a couple of big name people, notably Matthew McConaughey um, and Reese Witherspoon. But it's it's set in a kind of mystic South that resembles for me the work of Flannery O'Connor. Although I will say it's not quite as harsh and unforgiving a landscape as O'Connor's. It's a little bit uh, kinder and gentler. The main characters seem to live in what I guess is the Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana corridor. If I hadn't been told that it was Arkansas, I would have guessed Louisiana. I would have guessed the same kind of setting that season one of True Detective is set in, which also features Matthew McConaughey, interestingly, and I think that was just made a couple years after this movie was made. But the main characters live on the river, and they sort of scrounge and scavenge to get by. There's two boys who are there's three main characters. There are two boys, one of whom is a sensitive soul, and the other is kind of jaded and cynical and wisecracking. But they both live in these kind of cool river houses. Not not very upscale looking places, but they're right on the river. There's like the houses right there on the river, and it reminds me of places like out in the South Seas where they those houses that are up on stilts out in the ocean, and they have the divers that live on these in these houses and go deep sea fishing, and they can hold their breath for 10 minutes long or something like that. It kind of has that same sort of setting, except it's a river rather than the ocean. And one of the boys' guardians, he doesn't know his parents, but one of his guardians is this man who just kind of takes it easy and has chosen to keep on the sunny side of life and not to get too stressed out about anything. And this guy does like deep sea diving for clams, and he doesn't have anything but one night stands with women, doesn't take them too seriously, and he recommends the song "Help Me Rhonda" to his guardian, whoever he is, to this guy. I think he's maybe his nephew or something. But that's sort of the template song for the man who's heartbroken and who's just looking for a good time with another girl to get her out of my heart. And that's what he says that should be the spirit that he should live by in his life with regard to women, particularly. I'm going to get to the subject of women as portrayed in this movie Mud in a minute, because it's maybe the most interesting thing about the movie. But so you have these two boys. The one, again, the one I spoke of, who's more like the sidekick, the wisecracking sidekick, lives with his uncle, I believe. The other boy lives in a slightly nicer, like river house. Not too much nicer, though, with his parents. And his father is like not nearly so carefree. He's somebody who really scrounges to get by and seems very stressed out, and his wife is tired of him and wants to divorce him. and so he's very bitter about this, but he struggles to keep his bitterness in check when he's talking to his son about it, because he doesn't just he doesn't just want to talk down the boy's mom. But she wants to divorce him pretty much for frivolous reasons, what strike me as frivolous reasons. She thinks that he hasn't done enough as a provider, basically, and she's bored and wants a change. So that's basically what it boils down to. And so there are these two main characters, these boys, maybe 13, 14 years of age, and they often go off on adventures together. They go boating down the river, and one time they go to this island where they see another mystical site. Again, there's a real air of mysticism to this to the South as it is portrayed in this movie. Again, that reminds me very much of Flannery O'Connor, and also of other books and novels that have been set in the South. I think the South still retains this air, this flavor of mysticism. For some, it's like a kind of exoticism in which they see both that which they look down on and also something that they, in a way, are envious of. The South represents freedom, interestingly, in a way that other regions of the country do not. And I could go off on that tangent for a while, like how the South is portrayed literarily, Faulkner and the fugitives and all that kind of business, which is an interesting subject in and of itself. But to continue with the movie, the boys meet up with this this man who turns out to be the central character of the movie, and that's Matthew McConaughey's character. And they ask him his name, and he says his name is Mud, and that's all we ever know him as Mud. And that's kind of an interesting and funny way of, and also appropriate way of identifying this character. The expression "my name is Mud," when you're disreputable, when people don't look highly upon you. That's kind of who this guy is. He's scrounging even more than the other two boys' families are. This guy is just living on this island, living in this battered old boat which has been lifted into the trees because of a flood or something. That's what the boys are really amazed when they see the boat for a minute, and Mud himself acknowledges that ain't that a thing, or something like that. And it turns out that Mud is living on this island, scrounging, trying to fish, and he looks really rough when they first see him. Of course, Matthew McConaughey's, handsome and all that, but when they first lay eyes upon him, he does look a little rough and ragged. They become a part of his life, and they intervene on his behalf because he is looking to get back with the love of his life, and that's Reese Witherspoon's character. I don't remember her name right now in the movie. But we find that, they were together, and then she got tired of him and went off and got with this other man who was much more well-connected than Mud. But this man was a bad man, and beat her and impregnated her, and then pushed her down the stairs so that she lost the child. And so Mud went on a rampage and killed this guy. And now he's hiding out, and this guy who's a part of some chain, his family owns a chain of stores, I think, somewhere in the States. So they're much better placed. They're still sort of, they're not like super sophisticated people, but they're still much more highly placed, much better off than the other characters. Uh, but they also live by this very primitive code. And so the father of this other family, the father of this evil, unscrupulous man who Mudd's girl went off with and was unfaithful with and then ran into trouble because of her unfaithfulness, who Mudd then went and killed. Well, he's hired a bunch of men to find Mudd and to kill him, and they're staking out where Reese Witherspoon's character is staying at this cheap motel. But Mudd wants to. Mudd has forgiven his girl's unfaithfulness, and he wants to be with her again. And he sends the boys, this note to telling them where she can find him. And so he's building up this boat with the boys' help, and it's going to be a boat they can go off together and forge a life together somehow. And at first, Juniper, that's her name. That's the Reese Witherspoon character's name. At first, Juniper says she'll go with him, but then she flakes on him and doesn't show up at the rendezvous. And the boys find her in some cheap bar, some juke joint, flirting with another guy at the pool table. And they come back and tell him, and he's heartbroken. Very much like the boy, the sort of also the other main character, the more sensitive of the two boys. Mudd is a romantic, and it's hard for him to swallow the idea that this girl's just no good. But he does. He eventually decides to leave her behind. He's going to leave her behind, and he sends word to that effect. And then he himself comes and looks up at her the way that Romeo looks up at Juliet. In a moment of sort of inverse Romeo and Juliet scene, because that scene was a scene of excitement and love, and this is a scene of lost love where he's saying goodbye wordlessly. So he goes off, and there's some violence. Of course, the men find him, and it looks. I don't want to. I guess I've given a lot away already. I've talked about the plot, much of the plot already, but. The interesting thing is, again, and I'm saving this to the very end, the way that this movie reveals certain harsh truths about women. And, maybe not all women, but all the women who are represented in the movie are shallow, unfaithful, and there's also a girl that our young hero meets, and he thinks that he protects her from an abusive boyfriend, beats him up or punches him in the face, and then she's into him for a while, but then she ignores him and decides to move on, and then she's with somebody else, and so he learns this harsh and bitter lesson, both from his own experience and from what he sees his father going through, and from what he sees Mudd going through. And of course, the other boy's guardian, he just advises not doing anything but one night stands with women, and not getting seriously emotionally involved. Now, there's a dichotomy there, because to the very end, the character of Mudd is insistent that that's not the case, that love does exist, and that women can love faithfully, and that the boy shouldn't give up hope on that point, even though Mudd has been shafted by his girl. So again, it could be called a very red-pilled movie. It could even be called misogynist in its portrayal of all of the female characters, just not measuring up, not being faithful, not sticking it up, sticking through the hard times. Getting easily bored, getting easily lured away to somebody else who seems to have more to offer, but who's actually not a good man. So there's this there's this interesting theme, but it's not really the movie doesn't really bludgeon you with it. It's only at the end you put it all together and you think, wow, the women in this movie, they're all pretty lousy people. And of course, of course, the question could be raised: would this movie get made today in our ultra PC, woke SJW culture? I almost don't even want to think about that question. That's not really relevant to my thoughts about the movie. I just do think that it's an interesting film to watch, and I think you should see it. It has a lot to say about, I don't know, boyhood, about seeking adventure, about being afraid of certain possible alternatives, and yet forging forward in any case, despite one's misgivings. It has a lot to say about a lot of things pertaining to boyhood and manhood. So I should also say that the female characters aren't cardboard, like they aren't one-dimensionally awful people. Their shortcomings are very, very evident, but we also see, with Juniper, we see her regret at her lack of courage in following her heart, because she really does, in her heart of hearts, love and want to be with Mud, but just doesn't can't manage to I don't know, to transcend her cynical, materialistic side. And with the main boy's mother, she's again not portrayed just as a all flat out evil bitch, but still you read between the lines and you see she's definitely shafting the guy's father, and he's doing, in spite of his bitterness, doing a very able job of being the bigger man about it, and not trying to put her down, but also wanting to look after his son and wanting him not to fall into the same kind of mistakes that he made. So Mud, very good movie. See it if you can. It's on the evil venue Netflix now. If you still have Netflix, and have stuck with Netflix through all of this, is through all of their evilness, you can watch it there, or I'm sure you can watch it other places too. But do see it. It's a good movie if you're a cinephile type, and you like the South, and you like generally good, interesting, provocative tales of adventure and intrigue and suspense, and good acting, and complicated relationships. It's got it all. So see it. Mud, a misogynist masterpiece. My name's Andy Nowicki, altrightnovelist.com.